Welcome to Tech Tuesday. On Using the Internet, I'm Barry, and I will be your guide today. I have some slides which we'll be going through, but the focus of today isn't necessarily just on what's on the slides, but on what you want to learn. And so I'm going to try to take things that you're interested in. Stop me if you have questions, and if we can't address it in today's session, we'll have a future Tech Tuesday to go into it. And so we're always open to new ideas for things you want to learn, and we could talk for weeks about the internet. So, but we want to talk about things that you're interested in learning. And I'm going to run through this first step very quickly because life before the internet, most of you remember life before the internet, and for the rest of you, it's things that existed independent of the internet. We had media, newspapers, magazines, radio, televisions, home movies, classified ads. There were reference materials. You could go to libraries. You could look at maps, phone books, encyclopedias. There were experts. There were technical publications, cookbooks. People had their personal organizing systems, calendars, address books, checkbooks, household management. People went to restaurants and they would get recommendations. They'd get reservations. They would wait in line. They would look at menus. They would order, all those things. We didn't call them social networks necessarily, but we communicated with other people. We had telephone calls or letters, dating. We passed notes. We played games. We went to discussions. People went to churches. There were preachers. There were teachers. There was gossip. There were party invitations. There were professional networks. People shared resumes and got letters of recommendations, and they would hear about a job opening from somebody else. People did background checks, and there was an old boys club that if you got hooked into that, then you'd be able to figure out who knew who that could get you the job you wanted. There were stores, bookstores, record stores, garage sales, used car lots, repair shops, banks, stockbrokers, insurance, grocery stores. Many of those things are still there. And there were other things. There were foreign language dictionaries. You could get exercise. You could find informational brochures, government forms. There were advertisements. There were con artists out there. There was pornography. There were hoaxes and chainmail. All these things existed before the internet. So what's life with the internet like? It's like it was before, and there's more. So everything that existed before was still there, and we have things. So for media, newspapers and magazines, you can find online content. Things are updated throughout the day, so you don't have to wait for a publication to come in. Twitter, you can get information from all kinds of sources all over the place. There's blogs. People can write information. Anybody who has something to say can post it, and it'll make it available to the world. There's electronic magazines, there's web comics. As far as radio, listening to things, there's streaming. So instead of having to have a radio device, you can listen to things from people all over the world as it comes through live. It can be archived, so things can be stored. If you missed a radio broadcast that was on yesterday morning, you can find it and listen to it. You can listen to things from around the world that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get the radio station from. Television, you can find shows that have already been previously played. You can get subscriptions or find things on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon. The same for movies, and people can post independent productions out there via YouTube. You can find trailers. You can find parodies. Anybody who wants to put anything out, video, can put it out there and share it with other people. Your home movies you can put up on YouTube and share them with family or with the entire world. There are classified ads, and that's really boomed in the online community. There's Craigslist and eBay, ways of selling things, buying things, free cycle. In the old days, we would say, oh, I have a piece of furniture I don't need. I can put it out on the street, and maybe somebody will come by and pick it up because they'll say, oh, I could use a sofa. Now there's an online community where people can say, oh, well, now I know what street to drive down to find that thing. Or I can make arrangements to pick up that thing if it's exactly what I want. So for references, libraries have a lot of their content online, and you can find out what's in their catalog. You can reserve books, you can renew books. Books that are in the public domain, you can find them, load them on your computer, load them on a portable device if you want. Gutenberg.org is one place where the public domain sources are made available. Maps. There's GPS devices as well as Google Maps. We'll be doing things with detail with that. Phone books, I've got that mentioned up here. 411.com, social network, and just knowing how to do the Google search specifically for what you're looking for can help with that. Encyclopedias and Wikipedia, which is a way that everybody can add to the knowledge base that's shared by many people. If you want to find experts without knowing who they are, often people are available online. You can say, okay, well, I want to know, how do I fix this particular type of washing machine? And I don't know anybody who does, but there's somebody out there who has probably taken the time to answer questions on the internet on that. And other people have probably had that question, so you may find the answer you've looked for that you never would have been able to find before without mounting a massive search through experts in repair shops. Technical publications, many are online. Cookbooks, and people share recipes from around the world. So if you want a recipe on anything, somebody has probably posted one. My daughter just made artichoke brownies this past weekend because she loves artichokes and she likes brownies, and she was looking for recipes that could use artichokes. Personal organizing systems. So in addition to the old paper calendar and electronic calendars, it can also be available through cloud storage. You can access it anywhere you have access to a computer with the internet. It can be shared with other people. Address books can be synchronized between different devices, and that can be stored in the cloud, which is just a name for storage within the internet. For your checkbooks, there's a lot of electronic banking options available, and you can find out your transaction histories, and you can get notifications if you get if your balance falls below a certain amount and things like that. The banks are doing a lot to provide services there. For household management, you can find out what your utilities are. You can, ComEd is rolling out the smart meters, and so you can track the energy usage for your house. For restaurants, all the things that we could do before, we could still do. We still don't eat online, but you can make recommendations and reservations. You can sometimes reserve a spot in line. You can certainly look at menus, and you can order food sometimes online. Traditional social networks. There's all kinds of good things you can do to connect with people that aren't necessarily in your community but are spread around the world. You can connect with telephone calls. In addition to having a telephone, you can do that over the internet. You can do Skype to get video calls to talk to people and have it be much less expensive than talking, especially for international calls. Letters have largely fallen by the wayside, but email and other messaging systems are common. For dating, if you want to find somebody to date, there's a lot of sites out there. Some of them are general, like Match.com, and some are very specific. If you only want to date farmers, my daughter heard an ad this past summer for FarmersOnly.com. So they talk about somebody who was I was dating this person online. They were really nice, but they live in Chicago, and I have a farm, or I want a farm. So, that's just not going to work out. I only want to meet people who are farmers, and so there's very specific sites based on religion and other interests as well for that. For passing notes, there's internet chats. There's lots of ways of communicating with people. Some of them are anonymous, and some of them you identify who you are. Many games, discussions, preachers, teachers, gossip. All these things can be communicated and spread kind of globally, and people can interact in a lot of different ways, even without being in the same place at the same time. professional networks. And just on the handout, if you see something that's capitalized, that usually is that my intent is that that's a website. So if you go to monster.com or dice.com or linkedin.com, that will be a website that you could type into your address bar in your browsers. If I have things that are lowercase, like forums, archives, links, those aren't special words, but Twitter is. So you go to twitter.com and you could learn more about that. So that's just a convention I used to help identify for you later on if you say, oh, he said something about a dating site for farmers. What was that called? And so there it is. Stores, there's a lot of things that are bought and sold on the internet. You may have difficulty finding record stores in real life anymore, but you can buy music through iTunes, Google Play. These guys should be capitalized while I'm talking about that, because those are companies as well. And you may have heard of many of these things, but if you want to buy something, it's easy to buy things on the internet as long as you're willing to, give them your email address and your credit card and
Is FreeCycle the same as eBay?
No, FreeCycle is a way of, if you want to give something away for free, or if you want to find something that somebody else is giving away free, and it's much more neighborhood based. So if you say, well, I'm in the Warrenville FreeCycle, and so if I have a dresser that I want to give away, I can post it out there. And if somebody who's on the list says, oh, I could use that dresser, I can post a picture of it and a description of it, and then they can contact me through email and say, okay, I'm interested in this, and we arrange a time for them to come pick it up or to look at it or things like that. So other things, this was the odds and ends of categories I didn't find fitting into the other things. So you can track your exercise, especially if you have a device that ties in with all that information. I have one that counts my steps and encourages me to go on walks every day. A lot of the information that you can get from the government or from companies is available online. There's con artists out there, and if you have an email address, they can find you. And there's some things you need to watch out for on that. Phishing is somebody trying to get information from you to access your online accounts particularly, or to access your identity, to get your social security number, to get your credit card numbers and things like that. And that's, they're in it to try to steal it from you, and you need to try to learn to protect yourself against that. Malware is bad software that can be loaded onto your computer, and it can be viruses which will infect your computer, causing it to misbehave and do bad things. It can be spyware, which will watch what you're doing and what you're typing, and then it can pick up your passwords and things like that, and then that can be used to steal your identity. It can be adware, which will just be very much in your face advertising, and can be hard to get rid of. And so these are things that can happen to your computer, and we'll talk a little bit about how to protect against those. And yeah, there's a lot of hoaxes out there and people trying to take advantage of you. They were out there before, but now they're out there through your computer. Pornography, is easy to find, and sometimes it finds you. Sometimes there will be email things that you get, and the emails will try to filter things out and put them into spam to make it so you don't have to see it in your inbox. But people are always trying to be clever and figure out ways around that, and so it's a constant chase. And that's true of the other things, the con artists and the hoaxes, and the chain mail. Something that somebody says, "Oh, isn't this cute? I'll send this. Send this on to everybody I know," and then ask them to send it on to everybody they know, and things like that. And that may be well intentioned, but it can be burdensome as well. So there's etiquette in terms of using on that. A very good resource if you receive something in an email that says, oh, there's this bad virus, or there's this bad thing's going to happen. Make sure you notify everybody about it. Snopes.com is a way of, they do fact checking, and they'll, you can say, okay, before I pass something on, I'll check it on Snopes.com, and usually, it says, oh, this is not legitimate. This was something that went around 2 years ago, and it got revitalized and is going around again. It was proven to not be the case, or things like that. So, and it'll say, oh, this actually is a legitimate threat. Here's what you should do about it. So Snopes.com is a real good resource for that. And then there's some things that the internet has affected that weren't on the list of the world before the internet. Culture, as far as cultural impact, information flows very quickly, and changes can happen rapidly. Things can become part of the popular culture through the internet very quickly, and you may not know. There's a lot of silliness out there. There's a lot of really helpful things out there. There's a lot of disturbing things out there. But things can get shared very, very quickly. There's a blurred line between public and private with the social networking. If somebody wants to share what they had for breakfast every morning on Facebook, and all their friends can see what they had for breakfast, they have the option of doing that, and their friends have the option of saying, I don't want to see that. The whole social networking is changed the way that people interact in a lot of regards, particularly the younger generations. And as far as the technology, the video phone was something that wasn't out there before the internet. There was discussion of it, but it never caught on over the phone lines. But now it's readily available through things like Skype. So that's the scope of what you can do on the internet. What you need is a device to access the internet, a computer, a tablet, a phone, an internet service provider. So if it's a phone, that'll be through there. Other ones could be through Wi-Fi in public places, or through broadband subscriber at home. You need a web browser, and then a website destination of where it is you're going to. Or if you don't know where you're going, you can start with google.com and then type in whatever question you're looking for, and it'll help take you there. So a web browser is as you're navigating the skies of the internet, a web browser is like your cockpit. It's the way you interact with things. It's all the controls that you have, and what you see is the view from your web browser. It has a lot of different parts, and we could spend an hour and a half talking about web browsers or more. But going to talk just to highlight some of the most important parts. The main area is the big rectangle in the middle, and that's presenting the information that you're looking at from the internet. What's being presented is the information from the computer in the address bar. So if that says google.com, Google is who's providing this information. You can also type searches in the same address bar, and that's a relatively recent innovation. You've got your basic window controls to be able to minimize or maximize or close your web browser. You've got navigation controls for going, if you're on a web page and you want to go back to the previous web page you were on, there's a back button. Once you've done that, if you want to go forward, there becomes to be a forward button. If you want to reload a web page, there's a little curved line circle. And if you want to go back to your home page, how it's defined for your browser, there's a home button. Now, there's different web browsers, and they'll all have these same capabilities, but they'll look slightly different. The main web browsers that people use are Internet Explorer, which comes basic with Windows 7 and previous versions. Chrome, which is a web browser provided by the Google Corporation or the Alphabet Corporation, as they're now going to be known. Firefox, and those are the three main browsers in Windows. An Apple Safari is also a browser. There's dozens of other browsers that you can learn about, and they all perform the same basic functions. And if you don't get too thrown by the slight differences in the way they operate, you could use any web browser. They all have an address bar, and they all have the main area. They all have navigation controls. They may look a little different. They all these days have tabs, which are different pages that can be shown in this area. So right now, in the picture I'm showing, there's one tab, and that's showing this. If I opened a second tab, and I went to that, if I clicked on it, it might show me a completely different content. It would may have a different host, a different address bar location, but I can have them both up there, and they're like file folder tabs. So all you can see, other than the one that's in front, is that there's a little tab sticking up. But then you click on the second tab, and so here's an example. I've got Google tab, but up at the top, we can see there's a second tab up there. So if I click on that, that will show me this other page. And but it didn't make the Google tab go away. That one's still there. So I can keep multiple things active at once, and I can go back and forth between them. So that's what the tabs are. The last area that I want to highlight is the status area, which when you're on a web page and you're moving your mouse, the cursor, and it turns into a little pointing finger icon. It says, if you click here, it will take you to a different web page. It's called a link. And before you do that, if you look down in the status area, it will tell you what location it's going to take you to. And this is one of the important things that I like to stress from a safety perspective. Because if you get an email from somebody and it says, here's a link that you should go to, I might be suspicious. I might say, well, I'm not sure that's a place that I want to go to, or I'm not sure I believe when you tell me that this is from chase.com and that my account's overdrawn and I should look at it. I'm not going to trust that it's really going to take me to Chase. I think it's taking me somewhere else. So I'll hover my mouse over that link and I'll say, oh, it's taking me to some site in Russia that they're trying to steal my bank account information. So I'm not going to do that. From a safety standpoint, if you're not sure where you're going to click, if you hover over the area without clicking and look down in the status bar, it'll tell you where it is it'll take you. Any questions on web browsers or parts of web browsers?
Well, what's the difference between the top bar and the bar by Google?
So the top bar is primarily an address bar. It tells you what website is providing the content in here. Secondarily, it is also can be used to do a search. So if I'm on a page looking at the newspaper and I say, oh, that reminds me of something I want to search, I could say, well, take me to Google page and then do a search from there. Or they've made it easier to do searches just by typing in the address bar, what is the latest news about Bosnia? And then I hit the enter key, and it will do a search based on that. Typically, it will do a Google search if your internet browser is set up to use Google as your search engine. There are other search engines out there, but I will recommend that you use Google because it's the most popular and it's the best, based on my experience and experience of billions of people around the world. So that's it. Answer?
Originally, the address bar was just to put in the exact website address. That's how it originally was set up. So if you knew the exact address, you would type it in the address bar. But if you didn't know the exact address, you could go to the Google entry in the middle of the screen and type in regular English words to find the website.
Okay.
And a lot of browsers, based on that older model, there was an address bar, and then there might be a separate search window, a search button up here. So you'd have a place where you could type here, or a place where you could type here. And this one would be for the address, the URL, the technical thing, http:// all that details for a web address. And then you had a separate one where you could do a Google search. And at some point, somebody said, hey, why do we have these two different places? When they type something in, we can figure out whether they've given us a web address or whether they've given us a bunch of words that they want to do a search for. So let's save them time and say if they give us a web address, we'll go to the web address. If they give us something that's not a web address, then they must be doing a search. And I think Google was the first, Chrome was the first major browser that provided that capability, and then the other browsers have picked up on that as well. So you'll see in some of the instruction material, we still talk about sort of a search window at the top of the browser, but you really don't need that so much anymore. You can use the address bar. So if you know the website, you want to go to chase.com, you can type in chase.com and hit the enter key, and it will take you there. It won't do a Google search for it. But if you want to search for it, you could say Chase space bank and hit the enter key, and then it'll do a Google search for Chase, and it'll find chase.com when you do that. Okay, so then here's the description of what I was talking through on what I think of as the most important parts of the browser. And just a little bit about surfing safely. Beware of ads. You'll see ads on the internet. It's the price of free, because once you have your system set up, you can get email for free, you can do searches for free, you can do all these things for free, but the people who are paying for the infrastructure are showing ads and selling ads, and so it's sort of like free television over the airwaves. Yes, you don't have to pay for it, but you do have to sit through the ads. Okay, so when you're using a web browser, when the little arrow icon turns into the finger, that means it'll take you to a new page. Check the status line, and be very cautious before you download files. They can contain bad software. I'm going to show a brief video on the warnings of the dangers of using the internet. Okay, so that was put together by a group of students in Indianapolis that work on, they have a summer internship program where they work on safety videos. And I think it did a good summary of be careful about downloading things, be careful about free offers, and be careful about opening attachments. Okay, so that's the presentation. Now, hopefully, we can get to looking at some of these questions.